What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Crawl TV, and you guessed it, we are back to work on the CJ7 project. I've got a little bit of time this weekend, and I figured out an easy one-day job that I can knock out and make a great video for you guys in just one day. Tomorrow, I'm driving to Santa Ana with my friend Luke, and we are going to go buy a CJ5, so I have to make sure that I get this job done today. Hopefully, I have everything I need to get started, but let me talk you through what we're about to do really quick. So right now this Jeep has a dropped pitman arm coming out of the steering box, and then it has a newer tie rod and drag link, but in the factory location. Now the factory location puts this drag link directly on top of the passenger side front leaf spring, and that is not really a problem if you're driving it on the road. But as soon as you start off-roading, there will be binding between the suspension and the steering, and we don't want that. So this kit will actually flip the tie rod and drag link to the top side of the knuckle. We'll have greater clearance against our suspension. We'll have higher clearance above the ground so that we're not bending our tie rod or drag link. And we can get rid of that dropped pitman arm and replace it with a factory pitman arm. The benefit of that is that factory pitman arms are actually longer, so this will give us a better steering angle off-road. So nothing but benefits here as long as we do this job right, but this is one of those very particular projects where I have to be careful. I don't want to over tap anything. I don't want to destroy any knuckles. So we're going to go through this very carefully and methodically, and we're going to get it done. I've already taken the liberty of removing the tires and wheels and spraying everything with PB blasters so that I am prepared before we jump into this project, but I think we have everything we need and all the tools that we need, knock on wood, to get this job done. So let's run that intro screen and then we'll get started. All right, so the kit that we're installing today is actually a kit that I purchased from OK 4-Wheel Drive, and there's not much to it. This kit just has 3 tapered fittings in it, and once we tap those knuckles, the tapers will go into them, and then we'll be able to flip those tie rods and drag links over the top of the knuckle. So I ordered the kit with a reamer, and the reamer is pretty expensive, so this ended up being like I think it was like 200 bucks. But this kit has so many benefits to it that I think that it's worth purchasing. I will verify that or debunk that at the end of this video. Yeah, that was on there. Okay, pitman arm nuts off. Now let's grab that pitman arm puller and let's get this thing off of here. We'll give this some ugga-dugga and hopefully I can get it with the impact. If not, I'll start cranking on it with a breaker bar, but I have pulled the threads out of these things before too. So I'm hoping that we can get it the nice way first. That's kind of what I thought. We're gonna have to do this the hard way. Okay, there it is. Man, that is violent when that thing breaks free. Okay, so now we have the new, pitman arm. And so obviously the taper end is gonna be on the bottom because the tie rod end is gonna come up to it, right? And right now everything is steered pretty far to the left. These do have kind of a key in them so that you can't just like randomly misalign them. So this should go in kind of like that right there. Oh, and one thing I wanted to show you guys before I put this in, I just got a metal splinter on my finger. Before I put this in, I wanted to show you that eye to eye, this factory pitman arm versus the dropped pitman arm is longer. It's longer by about a ½ inch. So that means that when this thing throws left and right, it'll actually turn the steering wheel and the tires quite a bit more. The steering wheel won't turn more, but the tires will turn more. Anyways, let's get this guy in. Tapered end is on the bottom. Verify that, yeah. Okay, yeah, we're good. The pitman arm nut is something that you want to check a little bit down the road after you install a pitman arm. These are extremely important, obviously, because that's your entire steering right there. So if this nut backs off or falls off or anything like that, you can get loose steering, you can get no steering. It can be dangerous. So anyways, new pitman arm is in. Now we can focus on the high steer kit itself. So I'm going to remove the outer end of the tie rod and the drag link. If you use a pickle fork, you do run the risk, like I mentioned, of tearing these boots. You can see somebody was banging on the knuckle. You can bang on the knuckles. And it's easier to bang on a knuckle than it is on a pitman arm. So you can obviously try and hit right here to free this up just by adding a little shock load to it without hitting this, mushrooming the threads or the nut itself. Okay, so that one broke free. You can see how it's moving up and down. No damage to the tie rod end, no damage to anything. That's the way it should be. Yahoo! It's really hard to get this tie rod out because there's nowhere for it to go down because it hits the leaf spring. So in order to get it out, I kind of had to pry it around this knuckle to pull it out. The other one should be easier. Since this can come up now, that one can come down. But we're at the point where we need to clean up these knuckles and tap them. That's really the main point of this video. Hopefully, let's get through reaming out these knuckles with no issues, because if I do mess this up, it's new knuckle time and I don't want to go there. So I think I'm going to clean this knuckle up just a tiny bit with a flap disc. It's kind of mushroomed out on the sides from whacking it with a hammer and stuff over the years. I do want this to be a nice clean surface to work on, so I'm just going to smooth that out, and then once that's nice and planed, I'll break out that kit from OK 4-Wheel Drive and we'll tap these knuckles out and move on with our day. Okay, we're looking good now. That is a beautiful knuckle, ready to ream, and we're gonna do this very carefully. So it's time to use the reamer, but before we start reaming these holes out, we want to make sure that we get a good depth gauge on the reamer so that we don't ream too much. If we go too far with this tool, we render the knuckle useless. So what we do is we put the reamer in from the bottom and we'll wrap it with tape, or just stick it with tape like that and pull it back out. So that's our depth gauge right there. And what we want to do is we want to move this tape up just a tiny bit, and then we'll wrap this with tape and we'll use this tape as a guide so that we don't go too deep. It's the last thing we want to do. So now we'll start reaming this from the top, and we'll do this by hand. I don't have a tap handle, and this kit was pictured online with a tap handle. That's what I thought I was buying. So I didn't even think to grab one when I went to the hardware store earlier. So instead of a tap handle, I think I'm going to use this crescent wrench, and I'm just going to be super careful here. We're just going to start nice and gentle with this. This is $129. I looked at the receipt to see how much I paid for this tool. It's 129 bucks and it didn't come with a handle? Come on. What you don't want to do is put this on a drill though, and then get too aggressive with it. Okay, we are down to our tape mark. I don't want to go past that just yet. I want to make sure that we're looking good. So now the next part is to grab one of the tapers. And the tapers look like these right here. They're very small pieces. These were $20 a piece after looking at the receipt. I thought it was $18 for all three. I guess it's been a while since I bought them. So what we have to do is we stick this taper in from the top, and we make sure that it is 1/64th of an inch revealed. And if it is, then we stick it in to the bottom. But it is not there yet, so we will ream a little bit further until we get to where we want to be. That is right where we want to be. The instructions say that this should be extending out of the top of the knuckle 1/64th of an inch. I'm not a machinist. I don't know exactly what that is, but I can tell you that the knuckle is a little bit twisted on this one. The taper is sitting flusher on the inside than the outside, so I think that's where I want to be. Now, if I pull this taper out, what we need to do is stick the taper in from the bottom. See, what we're creating here is a reverse taper, to where when the tie rod end goes in, it's actually getting narrower as it goes down. So I got this first taper in. It is installed. It's flush with the bottom of the knuckle there. And now I'm working on the next one down. I'm going to power through this one and the one on the driver's side before it gets dark. I think I have about 30 minutes of daylight left, but that should be enough time. These reamers are extremely sharp and they work really fast, so you got to be really careful as you go through this to not over bore that hole. And tomorrow morning we'll come back out here and we will finish this project up. Hear me out. I'm kind of thinking that since I'm gonna have the tie rod and drag link out of the Jeep, I have a new diff cover for the front, and it is sitting right out in the open right now, just begging me to put that new diff cover on. I might do that tomorrow also. So by the time that I get all the steering finished up, you might see a new Oxlocker diff cover on the front of this, but that's going to be for a different video. So it's another day here on the ranch, and my new steering has arrived. The steering that was on the Jeep was bent from rubbing against the front passenger side leaf spring. So part of this high steer kit is to eliminate this from happening, because I don't want this to bind my steering, break my steering. Getting the steering up and out of the way not only gets it out of the way of rocks, but gets it out of the way of itself. So luckily I have a tie rod already at the correct length, so my toe in and out will be correct if I just set the new one to that length. So that's what I'm doing now. And let's get the steering thrown back into this Jeep now, but above the knuckles, and then we'll tidy it all up, put it back together. I'm gonna grease these tie rod ends, put some new cotter pins in them, and we are good to go. Once you have your tie rods back in, go ahead and install your cotter pins. If you pulled cotter pins out, I would recommend getting new ones to replace them rather than reusing old ones. They do seem to get kind of crappy after a while. But this is what the high steer kit looks like now. I'll get these pins in, get these greased up, and then I'll show you guys the final product and show you how much clearance I'm gaining by flipping my steering, and also how much clearance I have from my own suspension. So it's looking really good so far. Once you have your tie rod and drag link back in, it should look like this. I just put in the Zerk fittings and the cotter pins. I will double check my toe and my steering wheel alignment on the drag link. But now that these are flipped, you can see the amount of clearance we have. There's probably a good 3 inches between the steering and the leaf springs. So if these do flex, they're not going to hit my steering and bind it, which will cause them to bend like that one. Also, you can see on my approach clearance how much axle is exposed before the steering gets involved in big rocks or anything that I may run into. Now I have much less concern about bending my steering when I'm on the Rubicon Trail. And just for added protection, as you guys noticed probably, I did throw in that aux locker diff cover while I had the steering out. It's just easier to do when there's no steering in the way blocking your path. So I got that thrown in. Everything is a little bit more beefed up here. Since I replaced the tie rod and drag link, my dust boots are new. If you used a pickle fork to remove these, you may have torn your dust boots, so check them closely. If you put grease into them and it starts puking out the side, you can order new dust boots online. If you damaged your castle nut or the tie rod end itself, hopefully you don't have like an HD steering that you have to order, because it does take a while for this stuff to show up. So my advice is, before you start beating on this end to get these things free from the knuckle, beat on the knuckle or use a pickle fork. Don't even attempt trying to get these tie rod ends off with the castle nut flipped and banging on this end of it, because you can really get yourself into a world of hurt. I did that on my steering end. So luckily my steering was bent anyway, so it doesn't matter, but it is really easy to mess those threads up, mess that nut up. It'll mess your whole day up. So that's what it looks like. I'll throw the tires back on it and we are done with this project. So thank you guys for watching. I will put a link in the bio to this OK four-wheel drive high steer kit that I used. You can either order the tapers themselves or the tapers and the reamer together. It just depends on what you have. If you have a reamer at home, you don't want to spend that extra $129 to buy a reamer, but if you don't have a reamer, the one that comes with this kit is extremely sharp, works really well. Definitely only do it by hand. But that's it. It was a very simple project. As long as you don't mess your steering up or find that your steering is bent, this should be a couple hours. I appreciate you guys watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to this channel and comment below if you have any tips on how I could have done this better, or tips for the next person that's going to attack this small project to get themselves some better clearance on their steering. I will see you guys on the next episode while we continue the work here on this high school Jeep and on the other 3 Jeeps that are out here on the ranch. So we'll catch you then.